Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode review. This one's going to be for Season 4, Episode 14, Earth's Last Stand. Basically the finale to our space arc, and I suppose the start of just the rest of the show. I thought the episode was good, but not great. I had a decent amount of problems with it. It overall, I think, was better than a lot of the episodes this season. It did bring the space arc to a pretty okay ending, and I definitely appreciate it for that. I'm glad we're back on Earth, but it it was an episode that really highlighted for me a lot of the problems that the show has overall with regards to consistency of writing, whether or not it's trying to be a character focused slash plot focused show versus just fun every week, and that sort of thing. But let's get into the specifics here. The thing that frustrated me most about the episode was the how they characterized Leonardo. They tried to bring this plot of him trusting, then not trusting, then trusting the Fugitoid, Professor Honeycutt, together at the end, and it did an okay job, but I fundamentally did not get why he was so annoyed about this, whereas basically all the other turtles were fairly, like, we understand to some extent why you're doing this. And they had that moment where he just kind of came across, the professor came across as like villainous to make the other turtles doubt him. But it just turned out to be another kind of twist in the end. And I felt like that whole thing about him like sacrificing himself and then him being dead, and then they ended the episode revealing that he's still alive. Plus the fact that they layered that on top of the fact that, oh, there's the other professor who's just arrived here. There were just some very, very weak aspects to this episode. I didn't like what they did with Leonardo, just going off on his own and having his, at this stage, typical mid-season finale slash finale thing of nearly getting himself killed, but not actually getting himself killed. That just happened again. But this time it was even more frustrating because he went off on his own for basically no apparent reason. And all the other turtles were frustrated with him because he nearly got himself killed. And I think as a viewer, like, it was extremely frustrating to watch because I'm just like, that's not Leonardo. Like, I get there's a lot of stuff here, like, regards to, if this is the case, he basically blames the professor for the death of Splinter and so on. But at the same time, like, he's the guy who's even allowing you a chance to change that. Like, he did something bad in the past and now he's making amends for it. Like, the fact that just Leonardo was the character who couldn't in any way realize that, I had a big problem with. I can maybe understand Raphael doing it, like, he's the type of character who'd do that, but it was very unnecessary in my opinion. Um, then, as I said, the stuff with the professor, I think it would have had a whole lot more impact if they had in any way set it up in the previous episodes. Like, the only thing we know about the professor before this was a tiny flashback in one of the first episodes where he mentions, who he was as a human. They leave everything of importance about the character in terms of what the arc they're going for to this episode. And that's the problem that this show has at a base level that I don't think will ever be solved with it, and I don't know why. And that's that they seem to be unable to do anything of importance in episodes that are not mid-season finales or actual finales of a season. And this episode highlighted that to an insane degree. The amount of potential deaths we got in this episode, but not actually killing anyone, was crazy, basically. Like, I get it's a mid-season finale. You have to go for something, but they just too much like happening in just this episode. Imagine if we had had little hints of setup to the professor lying before this. Just getting to better know that character outside the kind of goofy science guy robot from previous episodes. Like, give a different serious side to him in previous episodes, and like this episode would have had a lot more impact. Because as it is, like, you had to do everything in this episode. You had to have April just suddenly start to sense that he's not telling them everything. Him begin to reveal all these kind of truths to them. Him not tell them the full story, and it's all this misunderstanding, and he's going to sacrifice himself. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but it's all happening here. None of this has happened before. It's all contained in this one episode. And that's definitely a problem I have with the show overall, because there's so much space in the other episodes where not a lot happens, where you could include little bits and pieces of the setup for this sort of an arc, but they don't do that for whatever reason. Um, so yeah, just a lot of those inconsistencies. I think it's also the reason I had a lot of problems with some of the fights in this episode, in that it felt like, oh, just randomly out of nowhere, this is the one episode where the turtles can suddenly fight okay against Triceratons and not be just utterly dominated by them as they have been in like every other episode. I get it was like 8 turtles, like they were the deciding factor, that there was the future versions of the characters arriving on the scene kind of turned the tide of battle, but it just was very quick, sudden, and rushed almost. Like, this, I feel, should have been 2 episodes almost, the amount of stuff that they went through. You could have hit the character stuff home a lot harder, had your action scenes all you want, but not have it be just condensed into 1 episode to resolve the end of this arc so suddenly. I really liked the Splinter Shredder fight that we got, in that we had the moment where it looks like Shredder has killed Splinter again, but actually, because of this slightly advanced warning, Splinter's able to block the attack, and we get a full-on fight scene between Splinter and Shredder, and that was really cool the way it was done. Like that fight instantly had more emotion to it, more story character to it than any other fight scene we've had in the past like 14 episodes, just because they have actually set up stuff between those two. The issue between Splinter and Shredder is big, and so then fighting has impact, which is something they need to work with the Turtles and their other villains. And it was good, but again, it was so quick. Like, it was just like fight scene, Splinter wins, and then Tiger Claw's just like, oh, you won this round, and we run off, and we really don't get anything about like what Shredder's up to next. It just felt extremely rushed. Like they just had to fit everything into this 1 episode, and it's so weird again because for the most part the previous 13 episodes have been so slow with regards to any sort of plot. The fact that they did so much in this 1 episode is just like, what are you doing? Why are you putting everything in this 1 episode when you could have spaced it out over a couple of episodes, like a two-parter or whatever? It's just baffling to me, the writing decisions with this show, honestly. Um, Even to some extent, the whole idea of the time travel stuff, and that we get revealed that no, the present day turtles are actually there. The new factor here in terms of changing the timeline is that the future turtles are the extra factor, in that they are the ones who have time traveled, so they are the second set of turtles. And what happens, of course, is I thought it was actually quite clever what they did, in that seemingly with just like, okay, no one's fading away in any sort of time travel thing where they go back to their own timeline. Are we just gonna have 8 turtles from here on out? And then like the present day, I suppose, alternate version of Fugitoid arrives, and I'm like, oh, that's what they're gonna do. And so the present day turtles go off with the Fugitoid and have their own mission, but because the timeline has kind of been changed, it is a more fun mission. It's just a fun exploration of space rather than a actually serious thing. And that was interesting to get those out of the way. And so it's just our turtles that we've followed the whole time are now back, having changed the future in their own world with everyone else. So that was nice to get. The cliffhanger ending of just the actual Fugitoid is alive after sacrificing himself was just, it fell extremely flat, because I'm just like, what? Like, what's the point? Like, you made this whole episode about him sacrificing himself and the issues that he had with telling them that. And you actually did a decent job of getting emotion and actually power in a scene of emotion out of this character who's been so goofy up to now, you can hardly take him seriously for the most part. But his sacrifice scene was actually very well done. And then you kind of ruin it with just the reveal that he's still alive out there. And I don't know what they're going for. Like, are the Triceratons going to grab him and they have control of him? Or is he going to crash back on Earth and they're still going to have him there? I'm not even sure about that. Like, it's just, there's no obvious setup for what they're going to do with the character, and it's just very weird to me what exactly is happening. and it just really took away a lot of the impact from the death scene for me. And that it's just like, okay, no one died. I wasn't. I'm not one of those people who are just like, for a finale to have impact, a character has to die. Just in this case, like they teased the death of Leonardo, didn't happen again. It's like the fourth or fifth time Leonardo's nearly died, um, and then they did the same thing with the Fugitoid. Which is like, what? Um, the only Triceraton fight I actually quite liked was the one against the Triceraton leader Morlock, I think is his name. They barely ever say his name, and he's a fairly average character, so it's kind of hard to remember. But I liked how it was just basically like this, 8, 10, 12 on one battle where they just were hitting him from all sides, and that took him out, and that there was just so many. He was just so outnumbered they could take him out. But just the other, like the random Triceratons, they were just so inconsistent with them. Like they've just been undefeatable the entire arc, and now they're like getting kicked in the face and out of action for like the whole fight. So that was a bit annoying. But yeah, as far as we're aware, the black hole generator is in fact destroyed. I don't know if they're going to do something about like Honeycutt's captured and they maybe force him to make a new one or something like that. But I assume at some point there'll be some sort of a rescue mission to get the Fugitoid back, and he may be with the turtles on Earth again. But I'm not entirely sure. And I suppose it's just one of those things where I don't really know where the show is going next. We've solved the major issue from like the season 3 finale and what season 4 has been about up to now. But what exactly is the show now? Apparently, like Splinter's just defeated Shredder, and they're still arguing about Karai and stuff like that. So Karai is still a plot, but it just felt like defeating Shredder so bluntly, like he's just been defeated by Splinter. It was just this thing like, why should I care about the character anymore? He just lost. Like our main villain, the most important character villain in Turtles, has just been defeated. Like, why should I care about what happens next? So in that sense, like I think there were a lot of writing problems with this episode that relate to the entire series. And as good as the episode I think was, it just, this show has so many problems. It just the good episodes, even the best episodes, aren't what they could be. So I just hope that we're back on Earth now. We can focus on more character focused stuff, actual important things about the characters. Have a plot that has impact and bring the stuff together very effectively. I want a shift in the story now. I think it's time to get a little bit more serious and not as much humor, and just realize, I suppose, the potential that all these characters have, and that I still think up to now the Turtles have basically no character development over the course of the 3.5 seasons we've had so far. So I want a shift in the story for the second half of this season, but as usual, I'm not very confident that the show is actually going to do that, because I think it's just going to be the same. We're going to get big moments in the finales and not a whole lot in between them. So I'm interested to see what they build up to with the season 4 finale, but I'm not, particularly like cool. I can't wait for the setup in like the next episode. I just hope Karai, they finally resolve that. I think that's been going on a little long now. It's time to finally like hit home what you want to do with her. I think that's the main thing to focus on next. Now that the major issues are out of the way. So in the comments, I definitely want to know your guys' thoughts on the episode and the review. But other than that, that's been my review for the 14th episode of season 4, Earth's Last Stand. And yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.